Hyperdrive Hockey is brought to you by the Game Over Network. Make sure to follow us on YouTube at Game Over Network and catch Hyperdrive Hockey in audio format on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other good streaming platform. Hello, beautiful citizen of the frozen pond. Welcome to another episode of Hyperdrive Hockey. My name is Max Zanut alongside Kevin Laramé. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Probably doing better than the Devils and a couple of the teams. Or the Bruins. You know, the Bruins lost a big one yesterday. But no, doing well. It's what I call the season turned a corner. The playoffs do not seem so far away. Teams are gearing up for the race for a playoff spot, and we're seeing a lot of either injuries, hot streak, cold streak really being influential in that race, and it's the fun time of year which is starting.
Yeah, poor Devils fan who last year had to endure a season that was in part derailed by poor goaltending. They remedied to the situation. They go and get Jakob Markstrom, and unfortunately, Jakob Markstrom went down on Wednesday night for the Devils. We are going to talk about this, the implication for the Devils, the implication for Team Sweden, for the four-nation face-off. We will talk about a lot of other things across the NHL and some news from the QMJHL also a little later on in the show. And for the first time in 2025, we will have our Not Even Sorry statement, our Not Even Sorry segment, should I say. We will be joined by Kayang Teach of Game Over Vancouver and Zach Payne from Game Over Toronto. Just before we go to the story today, we would like to thank our partner here at Hyperdrive Hockey, a delightfully witchy gut and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver and gold pieces to glamorous bespoke pieces. Xinshu Bijou. Inshu is more than just a company. They have built a community through their advocacy and welcoming attitude, which we fully endorse here at Hyperdrive Hockey. It has made them an institution in Montreal. Head over to 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise or inshubijou.com. That is INCHOOBIJOUX.com and enhance your style. Just like the New Jersey Devils might need enhancing between the pipes. So Jakob Markstrom, a tough situation to watch. I know that you were working on some games yesterday, Kev, and you were watching with the corner of your eyes that situation with Jakob Markstrom. Of course, Jake Allen ended the game for the Jersey Devils. Jake Allen, who is a reliable the veteran for the Devil. The thing with Jake Allen has always been that when he has to take the lead over an extended period of time, sometimes this is when push comes to shove for him. If it was a minor injury, if it was something that could take a week or two for Jakob Markstrom, I would not be too worried. Also, the Devils, they gave themselves a veteran duo. They're a young team, an up-and-coming team. They missed the playoff last season after making them for the first time in a while the prior season. I'm not going to call them a cup favorite at this point, but, with a full lineup, they are a team that can do damage in the playoffs. I will say this, though. If you are to lose your star net, and Jakob Markstrom is having himself a good season with the New Jersey Devil, his first one in Jersey. But, if you're going to have your goaltender go down, Montreal Canadiens fans are going to remember that before Carey Price went full, turned back the clock, prime Carey Price in 2021, Jake Allen carried the team in the 2021 season for most part of it. So if you are to lose your star netminder, I'm going to say that the Devils, they did good acquiring Jake Allen too. It could turn out to be a good acquisition. But like I said, he is a goaltender that does have a history of when he gets more starts. This is when it gets tougher for him. But I would prefer a veteran than being stuck in a position trying to rely on a green goalie coming a bit out of nowhere.
No, I have to agree. And the position of the Devils in the Metropolitan right now, they have a little bit of a gap between themselves and the Blue Jackets. Same when it comes to the wild card race. They're 57 points right now for the for 60 points now with the win recently. The Devils, so they're not necessarily in jeopardy of missing the playoff depending on how they play. Two things here, Max. There's a Montreal Canadiens ramification with this injury. If Jake Allen,
that is true.
If Jake Allen plays more than 25 games right now in the last 32, so he needs to play 25 of the last 32 games of the Montreal Devils, and another draft pick goes to the Montreal Canadiens. So that's the ramification when it comes to the trade with the Montreal Canadiens. Outside of that, there's a Team Sweden ramification. And I've been doing my research since last night, and you can see on the screen in a second, it's a pretty big bad news for Team Sweden. The drop-off is quite high. Top Swedish goalie this year in the NHL is Jacob Markstrom with 21 wins, 9 defeats, 5 OT losses, a saving percentage of .912, 2.2 goals against average, the best average of the regular goalies that are Swedish. Yes, Marcus Högberg has a better average, but he barely played. When you look at the second one, Philip Gustafsson, he's going to be number one for Sweden. But then there's a big drop-off. Linus Ullmark might be injured, so that might be 2 goalies needed for Sweden. Yeah. And the best other goalies are Samuel Ersson of Philly and Arvid Soderblom of Chicago are the 2 biggest names, with Anton Forsberg also completing a trio of possible goalies for possibly 2 spots with Team Sweden.
Yeah, this is crazy because Sweden is no Canada. They had depth in front of the net. I mean, who was going to be the starter? Like the 3 of them. Well, Ullmark has been injured this year, but he was catching, fire before injury. But other than that, Markstrom and Gustafsson both are having years. Gustafsson is having a tremendous year for the Minnesota Wild. It calmed down a bit early January, but he had a heck of a start to the season. So it was a good strength of the Team Sweden's roster. And now suddenly you talked about it, Markstrom down. And you know what? If you're an Ottawa Senator fan, let us know in the comment. I think they might be just as pissed about this because the depth for Team Sweden was so profound with Markstrom and Gustafsson. Maybe Sweden themselves would have gone. Yeah, Ullmark, like you're not the top of your game right now. You're going to be the 3rd goalie, and now suddenly you don't know. And if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you're trying to push for the playoffs. Ullmark might, if not is, the most important player for the Senators to make that push. Do you actually want him to play like a lot of games for that Team Sweden? I don't.
Exactly.
If I'm an Ottawa fan, I'm pissed. I do not. I want him to rest. I want him to make sure that the injury is healed, not for the tournament, for our playoff push. And I know we're both, because we talked about it before, we're both not the biggest fans of that 4-nation face-off. So this is even more like, this is no Olympics. If this was next year, this is the Olympics. This is the dream. Now it's the 4-nation face-off. So if I'm an Ottawa Senators fan, I am pissed. If I'm a New Jersey Devil fan, of course, I am pissed. And yeah, maybe Sweden will have to rely exclusively on Philip Gustafsson now. So I do think Ullmark will be ready to roll, but I hope, if I'm an Ottawa Senator fan, that he doesn't play.
No, exactly. I hope that somebody down the road be like, you know what? You haven't really played, and he's been back up or close to playing. They actually, Ullmark was a backup for a couple of games, and instead of starting the next one, they just pulled him off the bench. Did he actually aggravate his injury in training recently? We don't have any news on it, but actually that's what it looks like. And the Levi magic is finished in Ottawa. He's back to being a regular human. So there is some goaltending issues right now in the nation's capital, and you need to address that. Ullmark, of course, coming back would be that answer. I also think it's really bad news for the Devils and Sheldon Keefe. Sheldon Keefe was actually a top 4 candidate right now for the Jack Adams Trophy in his first year in New Jersey. The Devils playing above expectations and showing that maybe there'll be something to deal with in the playoffs, how they play. He was able to get Luke Hughes going. It took a little longer than expected this year. And of course, Jack is amazing, and he's got a couple other good pieces there. But I think that injury could be one of the biggest hurdle for Sheldon Keefe and the Devils before the end of the season. I think they will make the playoffs, but I think they're not going to be a contender. And with Jacob Markstrom, they could have been a contender.
Yeah, the Jersey Devils, of course, won that game on Wednesday night against the Bruins, but they only have 3 wins in their last 10 games. It feels like the Devils, the Hurricanes, and the Washington Capitals are completely uncatchable for the rest of the Metropolitan Division. The Columbus Blue Jackets being the closest team behind that third place Devils, 7 points behind the Devils. Okay, they have 2 games in hand still. Suddenly, you know what? You never know. You never know what could happen. But as I said, I do believe in Jake Allen to at least, do a good job for the Devils. While we're on the topic, since we've already talked about Linus Ullmark before going to other subjects, just to let you know that Julian McKenzie from The Athletic Ottawa reports that it's actually been confirmed by the Senators. They are placing Ullmark on LTIR. Don't dig too much into it for his return, though, because since he's already been out for a while, this is a retroactive LTIR, so they can pull him off of it anytime they want. And it's because David Perron is actually coming back to the lineup
so
for the Ottawa Senators.
Spot. So also, exactly. This will be something new. Every time you bring up Julian McKenzie on the show, I have to say, hey, Julian, I miss you. Can't wait for the day you'll be back in Montreal. Used to have a podcast with him back in the day. Used to produce this podcast, Julian. The Scrum Podcast forever, Julian. Hope you are well in the nation's capital. You're closer than before. You went from Calgary to Ottawa. You're close by. Hopefully next time I cross paths with you, we have time to chat a little bit. But my man, Julian McKenzie, one of the best and one of the brightest one in the business.
Oh, I fully endorse this statement. We'll make sure to send him the clip. He is, of course, a friend of the show. My man, Julian McKenzie, young GOAT in the making. Okay, just before we head to the other stories, if you're looking for a way to make awesome memories with your friends or want to take some promotional pictures for your business, check out Le Saint Motel in Montreal Southwest. It's an amazing selfie studio. It's located in Montreal's historic Château Saint-Ambroise, adjacent to Inshu Bijou. It boasts 12 unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories. Hop in their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Head to lesaintmotel.com for more details or check out their amazing decors. They are always being updated. And as always, when I'm reading this ad, I'm suddenly feeling weirdly nostalgic. Okay,
I'm actually let's go. We're looking at the heart-shaped ball pit right now. With the
I want to see Kevin it.
There's a 5 roses sign in the back with the Olympic Stadium and the city skyline with the Jacques Cartier Bridge. It looks really good. And my favorite room will probably be a little lower, where you see Mortal Kombat, Pac-Man, and televisions from the 50s all the way to the 90s era. That would be my go-to selfie picture.
Did you have a favorite Mortal Kombat character?
Yes, it was Liu Kang. Because there's only one move I really knew how to do, and it was the bicycle kick when he's in the air. So I would just do it nonstop and get all my opponents so mad, because if you time it properly, by the time he stops and hits him and you start it again, the other character can't do anything.
Never stops.
So I would just win like that, which is a bit of a button masher, but that's what I was.
You found the glitch like Patrick Laine on the power play recently from Montreal.
Exactly.
I'm a Sub-Zero guy. I'm a Sub-Zero kind of guy just because I thought he was so cool throwing ice from his hands. And then I watched the movie and realized he was a bad guy.
I was like, what? Well, technically, he's a good guy, though. If you look at the lore of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, exactly. It gets deeper than that. There's the first Sub-Zero, then there is the second Sub-Zero, who's his brother.
And Scorpion is the bad guy, and they're not friends. Like, they hate each other. They're not friends like in the first movie, which is amazing, by the way. The 1995 Mortal Kombat movie is amazing.
That song, that song is goated. Okay, that's way too much Mortal Kombat geeky lore. So you know what? Let's switch things up. Let's go to our coast take, if we may. And you know what, Kev? We actually have double Elias Pettersson news this morning.
We started with go ahead.
Because Elias Pettersson, how do we call him? Elias Pettersson Jr., Elias Pettersson, second of his name. The other Elias Pettersson, that guy, the defenseman, has been called up by the Vancouver Canucks because, yes, there are now 2 Elias Pettersson on the Canucks. Wow.
They want to make sure
Amazing.
Because if you trade one, at least you got one left. No, we didn't trade Elias Pettersson. We traded Elias Pettersson. It's a different one. We kept one. We just, do you think it's confusing? For example, you're a GM in the league. You call the Canucks like, hey, I'm looking for a trade for Elias Pettersson. Okay, sure. We're going to trade you Elias Pettersson. And then tell you which one, though. You're getting a defenseman, buddy.
That is hilarious. Wow, completely hilarious. All jokes aside, so yeah, he's actually been called up. But the other news is that according to Elliot Friedman, the Elias Pettersson, the one making north of $10 million a year, his camp has communicated with the team that he actually wants to stay in Vancouver. And that is an interesting development because it's one thing to not wanting to be traded. It's one thing to, waiting to see what's happening to you. But he actually communicated that his preference is to stay in Vancouver. And you know what? I actually think that the ending of this saga will be JT Miller traded and not Elias Pettersson, and Elias Pettersson pursuing with Vancouver. For those who don't know, we've talked about it before on the show. Pettersson has a no-trade clause, but that kicks in after this season. So there is a bit of a PK Subban situation here. What I'm meaning by this is if the Montreal Canadiens had not traded PK Subban for Shea Weber when they did back in 2016, which, by the way, was 3 years ago, not almost a decade ago. Boy, we're old.
It was 9 years ago.
He would have become he would have had his no trade clause kicked in a few days later. So this is kind of the same situation. If ever the Canucks have cold feet regarding Pettersson, they can't trade him right now because, of course, his play has not been to the level that they're expecting from an $11 million sentiment this season. But I do think that would be the right decision for the Canucks to keep Pettersson. I think that with players of this caliber, I do think it is really rare to get, the worth of your bucks for it. I think it's just a bad season for Elias Pettersson. I think also that with the cap on the rise, and apparently on the rise for quite some time and for a lot of money, I don't think his contract will age that poorly, even if he is, let's say, for the next 5 years, a 75 to 80 points per year player rather than a 90 to 100 points per year player.
I agree, I agree 100% that his cap space will not impede the Vancouver Canucks as expected over the next few years, as more money will be on the cap and they can be able to move and still acquire some pieces. And I also agree with what you were saying, and quickly, because everyone knows what's happening with him and the Canucks this year and JT Miller. Because everyone knows, statistically speaking, he's not having a great season. His value and what you would get in return are two different things. The return would have never been even close to the value, and it's not worth trading. Right now, if you're a GM and you want to be able to live with yourself and fall asleep at night when you go to bed, you got to look at what's possible and what return do I get on my investment. JT Miller still has a decent reputation, aging player that's on, a declining side of his career. Before it's too long, before his value is too diminished by the drama that's happening in Vancouver, you need to cut the cord, cut bait, get some return out of him, whatever that could be. They won't get, example, the rumored trade with the Rangers, AZ Banajad. That might be too high of a return. But if you get something decent, a couple of draft picks and a fourth liner, a couple of draft picks and an unproven prospect, or one veteran that is maybe not to the level of a JT Miller, but a decent draft pick included, maybe that's worth it. But over the next few weeks, I think it will make sense for the Vancouver Canucks to cut the ties with JT Miller, find him a place where he'll be happy, where the team that receives him think they got enough, and for the Vancouver Canucks to get a little bit of value out of it.
And Elias Pettersson is 26 years old. With Quinn Hughes at 25, with those two players cemented, which they are, and Thatcher Demko, who hopefully is back fully healthy for a while now, you still have a very good window with those three players, or at least with Hughes and Pettersson. So to me, you don't move on from you have a player like that, you keep him. You absolutely keep him in my book. Were you surprised by the the words out of Pittsburgh that suddenly Cal Dubas might be willing to sell and sell. Like suddenly Erik Karlsson himself came up and said, yeah, sure. If anybody's willing to pick up my contract, I'll go. No problem. Of course, when it's question of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Karlsson's a thing, but let's be real. He's been there. It's his second season in Pittsburgh now?
Yeah,
he's
second and a half, yeah.
What we really want to know, Mr. Dubas, is will you dare? Will you dare to break up Thor, Iron Man, and Captain Canada, technically in this case, but let's for argument's sake, let's call him Steve Rogers. So will you dare to trade any of Crosby, Malkin, and Christopher Leta? This is the question. And of course, it always heads back to Crosby. Well, because he is Crosby. He is Sidney Crosby. He is Mr. Pittsburgh himself. Yeah. There is absolutely, if there is one player in my head in his generation that will be, well, technically Carey Price has become that, but he's not retired per se, so who knows? Maybe he will get traded to. No, you can't get traded to the Arizona Coyotes anymore.
No, because they don't exist.
No. Exactly. Wow. Oh my God! What will teams do? Wow, that is actually we haven't treated. We need to know.
It will be
who will teams trade to?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's funny you talk about Cal Dubas, and we haven't planned this at all. But even before the actual hockey media over the last 2 days have been talking about, has Cal Dubas been the worst GM since joining the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Yeah, it has become a thing.
Yeah, we actually talked about it on TVA Sports, and I'm going to say shout out to Alex Picard, former NHL player, defenseman, former Montreal Canadiens defenseman, who is somebody that I work with. And those are some of his work, and I added some statistical background to it. There's 3 aspects of Cal Dubas that he's really done badly since joining the Pittsburgh Penguin, outside of nominating himself as a GM because he was the VP of hockey.
So we're not including his work in Toronto, is what you're saying? No,
this is just
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, a bad contract management. The Tristan Jarry contract, 5-year, $26.8 million. That one really didn't age well. Ryan Graves, 6-year, $27 million. He's over 30 games without a point right now, and he's not even playing. Erik Karlsson, he was brought in. It was a very costly trade, and his production have dropped by 45 points a season in average so far. Losing Jay Gensel with almost nothing, without even getting a top prospect from the Carolina Hurricanes when he traded last year. That's just some of the management of the players. Bad planification. When you're looking at him just naming himself the GM. Big expenses when you're looking for players that are not performing or barely playing, like Acciari, like Nieto, and a lack of capabilities when it comes to revitalizing or making this team younger with a team that has a Sidney Crosby and sacrificing the last few years of his contract. And now the consequences for Pittsburgh is you're having 2 years without a playoff. That's the first time since 2006. And the team is on the verge of having their worst points tally in a season since Crosby's rookie season in 05 and 06.
What's crazy, Kev, is that for the last 2 years and the year that is ongoing, there is always a moment in the season where we're like, oh, they're back. Like a few weeks ago, felt like they were back. And they weren't. Of all the things and all the moves that you have mentioned, the only one I would give a mulligan for Cal Dubas is Tristan Jarry, because at the moment of the signing, he has been an injury-prone player. Don't get me wrong. But that was his problem. When in net, he was actually a good goalie, a very good goalie. And if you have a goalie of that caliber, in my book, at that moment in time, at this point in his career, his age group, you keep him. Where I will go different, though, is it may seem stupid for some people, but one of the first thing Cal Dubas did when he came in was look at Tristan Jarry, who was historically wearing all black pads, and made him go, nope, my goalies wear all white pads. This might seem stupid, but you're messing with your player's mind, my dude. Yeah. Let him wear his black pads. I'm gonna rest my case right here. If they give back the black pads to Tristan Jarry, he will get back to his former self. I guarantee it. Well, I fully guarantee it.
They need to give him the net for that, and now he's in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. And,
that's it.
And I don't know if we talked about this on Monday, but if we did, sorry, forgotten. But a shout out to Alex Nedeljkovic, who's the first goalie to score a goal, have an assist, and an amazing night. And if I would have been him, I would have dropped the gloves, fight somebody, and get a Gordie Howe hat trick.
God.
And be the first goalie ever to get a Gordie Howe hat trick.
We had not talked about it, and you know what? That would have been completely
like right away.
amazing.
He scores a goal, drop the bit, grab a player, just go for it. All right, I got a Gordie Howe hat trick. I'm going to be a legend from now on, which he will be, scoring a goal and an assist. By the way, first goalie in the history of the NHL, ECHL, and the AHL to score a goal. In 2016, he scored in the ECHL. November 17, 2023, he scored for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And on January 17th, scored for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Do you think a team will dare to take Erik Karlsson? Because Erik Karlsson, part of his salary is retained by the San Jose Sharks. So if you trade for Karlsson with salary retained by Pittsburgh, you know what? If you get
all his salary will be paid by other teams. That's amazing.
Yeah, if you get Karlsson for what would be like, I don't know, 3-point-something million, close to, that's actually a decent deal.
So
he still has 2 seasons to his contract. You know what? I could see some teams maybe pulling the trigger on that.
Well, would it work next to Lane Hudson? Imagine the power play.
No, absolutely
that's
not.
Too
Are you
defensively
crazy?
Yeah, that's too defensively liable. You're right. Okay, who else could benefit from a diminishing output of an offensive defenseman?
I don't know. That is a good question.
Yeah,
because
I don't have an answer.
He's diminished, but a diminished Erik Karlsson is better.
Still better than like half of the defensemen.
I'm trying to look right now, like the Ottawa Senators. I don't think because there has been talk about reunion. I don't think they have more on the left side, but they have like that's the reason they traded Jacob Chikrin. Okay, Karlsson's righty, Chikrin's lefty, but they were saying too many puck-moving type defensemen.
And you should never go back to your ex, Max. You should never go back to an ex. It'll never be what it was before.
A very valid point. The Tampa Bay Lightning's depth on defense isn't that good, but I'm not quite sure that a profile like Karlsson is the right one for them.
No, they'll be too...
If I'm looking at team on the outside looking in, I'm not really seeing any fit. That I'm going out west. Could it be Minnesota Wild to use a Erik Karlsson?
San Jose, what for? Like, actually, one team might benefit from him. And I saw them play last night. It's the best defense in the league when it comes to goals against per game. Goals against total. Third by goals against per game. But they're lacking offensive output. LA Kings. The Kings could maybe benefit from a Erik Karlsson, actually.
Back to California. Yeah, with Drew Doughty injured. Yeah. I think we have two good shooters. And of course, like I'm trying to look real quick the math, but of course I didn't prepare that. I didn't thought I just threw that out there. But the Wild, Brock Faber with Erik Karlsson could be interesting. Yeah. Although true. Brock Faber's a righty too. And Zeev Buim is the lefty, but Zeev Buim is in there for a while. But yeah, no, Brock Faber's righty. I don't hate your call of the LA Kings. That actually could be quite interesting for.
And they have some good pieces to sell, and they have to get ready for the playoffs, and they have to get a bit of a better offensive output in general. And I think having that type of player will help them start to progress through the neutral zone and get in the offensive zone a bit more established.
Let us know in the comments, who do you think could be a potable suitor for Erik Karlsson? Couple of things to watch for this weekend. There is a Battle of Ontario between, of course, the Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Habs Devils with now, I guess, probably Jake Allen in net. So Jake Allen going back to Montreal. The Rangers are red hot and back and forth. The best team in the NHL since January 1st. So keep an eye on the New York Rangers. You know what? I think the New York Rangers are going to make the playoffs, Kev.
Yeah, to the detriment maybe of another team. Hopefully they do top 3 in the Metropolitan, but I agree. And you know who's not going to make the playoffs?
The Blue Jackets, unfortunately.
The Boston Bruins.
Oh, that I agree.
They're in a free fall. It's continuing to, like last night, 5-1 against the Devils as we're recording this on Thursday. Yeah, the Boston Bruins are a shade of themselves.
Here's my wish. Montreal or Ottawa and the Blue Jackets. My real wish would be Montreal and Ottawa, but because, of course, of the Blue Jackets' beautiful story, I want them in there. Here's now my actual prediction. Montreal or Ottawa are going to get a spot. The Rangers are going to get the other. And every single team, even the Devils without Markstrom that are currently top 3, will stay top 3. So here we go. Montreal or Ottawa and the New York Rangers will be the wild card teams.
And, I wouldn't even be surprised if Montreal or Ottawa actually climb in one of the spots in the Atlantic Division. They're actually close. They're only 1 point actually with the win yesterday. Tampa Bay has 53. Montreal has 52. So they're only 1 point away from Tampa Bay and the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. The Atlantic, sorry. So Tampa Bay, it's not necessarily guaranteed that they'll be a top 3 team. Maybe Ottawa or the Canadiens can get that one, and then Columbus and who else? Ottawa maybe, or Montreal, or whoever will round up the wild card.
A week ago, I would have called you a madman for even suggesting that the Tampa Bay Lightning are not going to be a top 3 team in the Atlantic. And now I'm actually starting to believe it. They don't have the same amount of game in hands that they used to have. So they only have 1 game in hand on the Habs and the Senators and only 1 point ahead. And with the Habs red hot, with the Ottawa Senators, keeping their head afloat without Linus Ullmark, I don't remember a year being this excited by the playoff race this early in the season. I don't know. Sometimes it's just recency bias. Maybe I'm completely wrong here. Maybe it's
you're right,
Montreal were out of it too early. But I do not remember a season being so interested in, every freaking day looking at the standing and counting the games. And it's really fun. It's really fun.
All the way.
For that,
Sorry, I was going to say all the way to the Flyers. So if you look down in the wild card race, all the way to the Flyers, which are in the 6th spot in the wild card, only 2 points away from Ottawa in the 2nd spot in the wild card. And some of them have more games played than other. Pittsburgh is at 4 points away. They played 1 more game. So depending on who wins that game, it could be technically 6 points away or 5, depending on how you calculate it. So maybe Pittsburgh is a bit too far at this point. But from Philly onward, Philly, New York, Boston, Montreal, Ottawa, and Columbus, those 6 teams, and maybe include Tampa Bay in that conversation because they're only 1 point ahead. So you got 7 teams for 3 spots possible. And that's quite insane when the calendar is going to turn to February very soon.
I'm with you. So last time we talked about this, I excluded Buffalo and the Islanders. To me, these are the teams that are out. I am now willing to include Pittsburgh. I'm still keeping an eye on Detroit. They have 2 games in hand on Pittsburgh. I'm still not fully convinced that the Detroit Red Wings are fully out, but they're getting closer. So it's something that I don't like doing, but on that one, I got to give kudos to the NHL for their goddamn parity that they want so much. Right now, it makes for a very exciting playoff race.
And even in the West, we didn't talk about it, and we're not going to go deep. But I just want to say, even in the West, it's kind of crazy. So we might do a little deep dive next time.
Exactly, we'll do the deep dive on the next episode. Just before we go to our very first Not Even Sorry segment of 2025. Just to let you know that if you're looking for a way to support the Game Over Network, we have some very good and some very cool apparel line that has dropped. So head over to GameOverNetwork.com, theGameOverNetwork.com. You want a nice t-shirt, a hoodie, whatever, a mug, it's all available on the GameOverNetwork.com. And also, if you have a little bit more means, you can support us via our Patreon. Of course, you would help support an emerging and upstarting independent sport media in Canada. Game Over Networks hires 30 young journalists and analysts all across the country. And we're going to go and talk to 2 of them from Vancouver and Calgary. Let's head to our Not Even Sorry segment. And for the very first time in 2025, we are ready to actually go coast to coast in our Not Even Sorry segment, where we go all across Canada talking to Game Over hosts and bringing the hottest of takes and being anti-Canadian. Well, actually being very Canadian. No, being anti-Canadian, not being sorry for it. And today, for the very first time, we are joined from Calgary, but from Game Over Toronto. Zach Payne is joining the show. Zach, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being with us.
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
And she's returning. She's actually, I think she's our first returning cast member of the Not Even Sorry segment. And we love her, Kaya Ntich from Game Over Vancouver. Kaya, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
We are so glad to be joined by you both, and we are so glad to be all across Canada. Make sure to not only follow Game Over from your favorite team, but, who doesn't have a second team these days? Who doesn't have even a third team these days? Make sure to catch Game Over and at least follow Game Over in every market. Of course, it helps our small, independent, and on the rise media. We have a lot to talk about. Each one of you will have a hot take or at least an opinion to defend. And you know what? Let's start with Zach since it is his first time on the show. He's going all in the bat. Zach, are you throwing under the bus? Are you uplifting? What are you going for?
I'm throwing under the bus for sure because there has been a very big story in the last week that I think we need to talk about.
Who are you throwing under the bus? What are you going with?
So I'm kind of throwing a collection of players under the bus, but the catalyst for this opinion is Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers, given the events of the last week that I'm sure Kaya has covered in detail over on with Game Over Vancouver and the rest of the Game Over Vancouver and Edmonton hosts. So for those who live under a rock, Connor McDavid suspended 3 games for cross-checking Connor Garland in the face. In the aftermath of that, the Edmonton Oilers release a statement. Connor McDavid very upset with the suspension. We can argue the merits of 3 games. Was it too much? Was it too little? I'm not here to talk about that. What I'm here to talk about is the NHL needs to stop treating star players like they are children. Because at the end of the day, we see what has happened in the NFL, in the NBA, when star players are treated differently from the average player, and it makes the product worse. And we don't actually want the NHL protecting superstar players, because what makes star players stand out is their ability to play on the same playing field as everyone else and elevate themselves. They are different than the average player because they're better than them, not because they're treated differently. And we do not want to see a world where star players are protected. Just a week ago, if you're a football fan, Patrick Mahomes was running with the football and he slid, and 2 Houston players came near him and they throw a flag, 15 yards, unnecessary roughness, and when looking at the replay, they didn't even touch him. They hit each other. The 2 defenders hit each other and they threw a flag because it's become common practice. Whenever a quarterback is touched, you throw a penalty flag because you're not allowed to do that. In the NHL, what makes the game so special is everyone is up for grabs. You can hit everyone the same, and if you want to do something about it, you can drop the gloves. There is no place in this sport for anyone to be protected or treated differently, and that's what star players are really about, and that's why Connor McDavid and every other star player that is built like him needs to stop whining.
That is a very, very interesting and well put take, Zach. You made some very good points, and I partly agree with them. I do have a question for you, though. When you say not protecting the star players, I get where you're going with the NFL. I do think that, and, it's kind of ironic because Tom Brady made a point about it. If there's a guy who was protected, it was Tom Brady. But I did agree with him when he said, protecting as a player is, it's okay to protect the quarterback from players who go straight for the knees because they are defenseless in regard to that. Just like you protect a defensive lineman from a chop block, a defenseless wide receiver going for a catch, and it's when it's going over the top that it's too much. So let's take the Connor Garland, Connor McDavid situation. So you say not protect the players. I can agree with that. But in that situation, Connor Garland deserved the penalty for holding, right?
Absolutely.
If it stops there, there is no retribution and all of that.
I think the overall point is the rule book applies to everyone equally.
That I agree.
So Connor Garland absolutely deserved a penalty for wrestling Connor McDavid to the ground. It could have been, random guy from the AHL and it would have been a penalty. But McDavid chooses to retaliate and he gets a suspension for it, and he shouldn't be able to, he shouldn't be complaining about that. You reap what you sow.
Yeah, I agree. Kaya, where are you going with this take from Zach?
I mean, I do like it. I would say, the protecting star players. I feel like that wasn't. I mean, I wasn't alive during the Gretzky era, but that might have been more of a thing. But I just think of Sidney Crosby. He was the number one victim in the NHL for a while. And I mean, head trauma is a that fun. But I do agree that like just because they're different skill wise from a lot of other players doesn't mean that they're exempt from getting penalties when you chicken wing another player and give them a concussion, stuff like that. Um, yeah, it's funny that Zach mentions the Mahomes thing because that's like a joke that a lot of people have. I mean, especially in the Canucks area where, we obviously don't like the Oilers. But it's like, yeah, you're 2 minutes for getting too close to McDavid is a running joke when somebody gets a penalty, when he draws a penalty. And then people would just be like, oh yeah, he's 190 something in drawing penalties. And just like, okay, well, still, it doesn't mean it's okay to cross-check somebody in the face, to stick out your elbow and concuss Marcus Johansson, to do everything that he keeps doing. Um, he gets away with, and then like expect all the calls to go his way. Yeah, Connor Garland deserves the penalty there. The Canucks also didn't have the puck, so even if it was a delayed penalty, the same thing would have played out. So yeah, I do agree with star players shouldn't be as like bubble wrapped necessarily as like a lot of their counterparts. Yeah, it should be applied to everybody. I think that if you're going to make the same calls for somebody getting near Connor McDavid, you should do the same thing with somebody doing the same to Noah Juleson, like for example. Like
Yeah. The part where I agree with you both, and I agree with your take, Zach, is that when you said star players are star players because of what they do against the best players in the world and all that, by being star players, you're going to get more calls. Connor McDavid is going to get more calls because he is better and faster than everybody. But just like every other, I don't know. I remember Rob Gronkowski was a force of nature back in his prime. You couldn't take him down in any way, but sometimes illegal way. So you're going to draw calls just by the nature of your game. I do agree that you do not need to do more than that. Also, there is a thing that I'm actually kind of surprised in the narrative. How many times do we hear when a fourth liner, a grinder, or just a non-star player, when a non-star player gets suspended, like a good suspension, a good, well-deserved suspension, we're going to go, oh yeah, of course, they wouldn't have done that if it was, and then cue in the name of any star that you want. I'm actually surprised that McDavid getting 3 games didn't get, at the very least from the media and the fans, a little like, oh, well, good to know that McDavid can also get 3 games. Because I was pleasantly surprised. I told Kev on Monday, on our last episode, it was 24 hours before the suspension came out. I was like, he's going to get a game. It's McDavid. He deserves more, but he's going to get a game. So I was pleasantly surprised, actually, by the 3 games.
I was just gonna make the point. Yeah, I mean, I think the league set a bit of a precedent. I mean, again, precedent with the Department of Player Safety is just that's not a thing that exists to them.
No.
But
Agreed.
When Matthews got suspended, those 2 games for having the cross check, it wasn't even like intentionally in the face of Rasmus Dahlin. It just rode up on his shoulder and hit him in the face, which still isn't okay. But like cross-checking's a penalty regardless of where it is. Um, Honestly, I mean, if you do it hard enough, there's, refs who can't tell. But with that, he got 2 games. McDavid getting 3 games for it being intentional, I feel like makes sense. I
Yeah.
also I feel like because of the Oilers' reaction, which I will get into, I think that's why the media hasn't been like, oh, it's good to know, or like people haven't been, oh, it's good to know that McDavid and Tyler Myers have equal suspensions in this case.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin, do you have a closing statement on the bubble wrapped star players?
I'm just going to add what I really like most in life, a little bit of shades of gray in all this. I think it could be true that referees need to literally call the rules, and I think the suspension is warranted, but I also think that in a perfect world, regardless of your player's name, you would be called. But for referees, they don't have the benefit of instant replay, and they also don't have the benefit of looking sometimes at who the players are in real time. If the referee saw what happened, maybe the penalty would have been called on Garland, but it wasn't. It was a bit behind the play, and there's no going back. So even though we're all like, oh, the referee should have called it, they don't have the benefit of instant replay. I think the narrative of the 3 games, it was warranted for McDavid, and most of the people that I work with in sports media right now in the world of hockey are agreeing with the suspension. Like, it's a deserved 3 games. Where they say that a player should be protected is back in the day when Gretzky had Dave Semenko next to him. And Dave Semenko would punch a hole through the face of anybody that got too close to Wayne Gretzky. In today's game, they don't have the same type of, I don't want to say goons, but the enforcers need to be playing hockey. Evander Kane is still injured. He might not even play in the regular season to protect Connor McDavid. The frustration boils over, and what you're seeing at that moment is the culmination of games and games of being slashed and being hit in the shins and being pushed over, being called a whole lot of things. So I think there's also a little nuance here where, as much as that boiling of emotion by Connor McDavid is suspendable and is not warranted, I think the circumstances of him being a target every single game, every single play, should sometimes be taken into consideration.
He's also a grown-ass man.
Yeah, but in today's world, it doesn't mean anything. The rules are the rules, whether you're a man or a player.
I actually agree with that quirk. Kaya, since you're staying in the same topic, let's get to yours because you're hitting from a different perspective a little bit. Are you throwing under the bus or uplifting? Maybe you're uplifting Connor Garland through it all. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could lift him physically. I'm throwing under the bus the Oilers organization for their statement. Okay. If anyone has not read this, I'm just gonna really quickly. The Oilers organization is disappointed, and we share in our fans' frustration over the 3-game suspension of our captain, Connor McDavid. We support him through this process, and the organization and our fans look forward to having him back in the lineup versus Seattle next week. We support him through this process, and it's not like he even appealed it. Like McDavid said, oh yeah, I don't agree with it, but like, I mean, I'll take it. And he's like complaining still about, he said, a penalty in the first is a penalty in the third, a penalty in October is a penalty in April. The Canucks didn't have the puck. The Oilers had the puck. So even if it was a delayed penalty, I've made this point, and I feel like this point gets overlooked. Even if it was a delayed penalty, the Canucks didn't have the puck. It's still like, the call still would have happened eventually. Just like, it didn't happen. Eventually, Connor Garland did get a roughing, get a minor, because everyone on the ice got minors. But with this specific statement, just like we support him through this process, like he didn't even appeal the suspension. He didn't even appeal it. What process is there? Him sitting at home on his giant couch with his dog? I'd love to do that. Like, honestly, like, sure, he doesn't agree, but like not appealing it. So, like, imagine if the Canucks did this for Tyler Myers. Like, imagine if the Rangers did this when Matt Rempe got suspended for like 8 games.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I understand he's like a big like moneymaker for you guys, and I guess for the league, but like, still, we support him through this process, and he did the wrong thing here.
The part where I really agree with your statement, Kaya, is I guess from a public relation, if I'm just being the devil's advocate here, if I'm going from a public relations standpoint, I can understand the message you send your fan, but I do agree that the Oilers are basically asking special treatment they're basically saying a star player can do whatever he wants. This, personally, as a completely observer of the situation, would absolutely how do you say this? No dog in the fight. I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, but like, so where does this end? Like, let's say Connor McDavid went full Marty McSorley on the Donald Brashear. Like you do the same. Like, where where does it end? Like, it was a cross check in the face. I agree with the part of a penalty being a penalty and everything leading to that, like, should have been called. But after that, you can say, yeah, it should have been a call, and also say on the other hand, but you retaliated. Like, you retaliated with you killed a mosquito with a gun, basically. Because, like, if he had given a little slash behind the chin or like whatever, like, like, it happened in the heat of the moment. No, you cross-checked him in the face. So I agree. I agree that the Edmonton Oilers should be thrown under the bus. Zach, I'm guessing with your earlier statement that you agree with Kaya on this too.
Well, first of all, I think equating Connor Garland to a mosquito is a very good description.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean Connor Garland. Oh my God. Wow, I didn't see it that way. Oh, wow.
You're right. You're right.
Well, you know what? I said it. I'm that type of player in beer league, so you know what? That was said with love to Connor Garland.
I call him Chihuahua all the time, so it's fine.
I saw Kaya laughing when I said it. I was like, did I say something wrong? Like,
I've just never heard that phrase. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a saying. It's a saying in French. So good to know that it's not in English, and I did just learn it to you guys.
Well, to play devil's advocate, I think the caveat to remember is, yes, the Edmonton Oilers organization might have just proven that they are Charmin Ultra Soft, but they also, the NHL made them this way. Because if they say anything, what they want to say is that was a bad decision, and the Department of Player Safety did not adhere to previously established precedent. But they can't say that because then they'd get fined. And so they said as much as they can say without getting fined. And I think in a world where the NHL themselves weren't paper soft, then the Oilers would have sounded off a little bit more.
Kevin, are the Oilers ultra soft?
Well, yes, but that's not necessarily just the issue. I also think that there's how can I say this? I think where the Edmonton Oilers think it's unfair is when you look at both suspensions, right? Both 3 games. But if we dive a little deeper, 3-game suspension for Connor Garland equals to $36,000 in missed wages. When we look at 3 games for Connor McDavid, $192,000. So I think that's their point when they're saying how they're going to help him through that ordeal is the equivalent about 20% of his, 1/20th of his salary this year will be in those 3 games. So that's the point where I believe the Oilers are saying it's not fair. It's as much as the same amount of games as Garland, the actual penalty to his bank account is a lot higher.
I mean, I also, he makes millions of dollars a year. I'm not really, I understand 120.
Yeah,
but
it comes with the territory.
I don't think property taxes are the same in Vancouver as they are in Edmonton. So I'm going to say, 120. That is a lot of money to a regular person. So I'm like, that would suck if you're normal. If you play a game where you put a piece of rubber into a net and you make millions and millions of dollars a year, you have a heated freaking driveway. I don't know. I agree a bit. But yeah, I thought people were going to bring up more Tyler Myers' history with suspensions, but then again, his last suspension was in 2014. Fun fact, all 3 of the suspensions were for 3 games. But his last suspension was 2014. He also got suspended in 2012. But yeah, 2014 and 2012, I was still in elementary school. So it was a while ago. I'm not sure if they were going to bring that up, but yeah.
The other thing too is McDavid has injured 3 players or something in the last 2 weeks with his antics. He is quickly becoming the Nikita Kucherov West. So
no one talks about Kucherov. Kucherov is just like this.
Yeah, I deal with Kucherov all the time.
It's interesting that you talked about the elbowing, Kaya, because the elbowing was way worse for me. Completely way worse, and it's kind of been thrown under a rug. But I agree. I agree with Zach on this about how like it has become a pattern with McDavid. And if you didn't suspend him, he might to circle back and to bucket it all up, like giving him a sentiment that he can do whatever he wants, and that would have been even more dangerous. So we're probably not going to get a whole lot of love from the people from Edmonton in the comments, but you know what? Let us know. Let us come in the comment. Let's talk a bit about a different subject now. Kevin, throwing under the bus or uplifting? We're in a throwing under the bus mood today.
Well,
what is going on?
I gotta also keep my reputation, so I'm throwing under the bus.
You're the Grinch.
Throw under the bus
God.
hard.
Wow.
All right, let's go. Buckle up, people. In about 20 days from now, a made-up tournament is gonna start in Montreal and in Boston. And if you go on Ticketmaster right now, for the very low price of about $220 Canadian, you can get a ticket right next to the banners, all the way up in the rafters, looking at ants on a skating rink. And there's a whole lot of tickets left. And there's a whole lot of commercials on TV, on streaming platforms, on websites, asking you to please buy a ticket to our made-up tournament. The Four Nations face-off is looking like the Four Nations, well, nothing going off, because it's not going to blast off. It's not going to go anywhere. It is struggling to catch the attention of true hockey fans. It's struggling to catch the excitement of true hockey fans. And I think we're going to see a bit of a dud, a bit of a blunder, and also I think it's going to flop. Just like Commander McDavid sometimes. It's going to flop. And I do believe that this tournament will be a wake-up call to what the executive think the fans want and what the fans want. I want to see nations face off, but not just four pick nations. I want to see all the nations and have a Cinderella story in there. Germany beating a good team. I want to see, even though politically speaking, I do understand why Russia is not here, and it makes a whole lot of sense. But sporting reasons on the ice, they would have a better team than all the four nations that are right here right now. There's a whole lot of reason why a real best-on-best tournament wouldn't be called the face-off. And as much as I am not excited whatsoever, if you can't tell, about this tournament, I don't think the players are also. And if the players are not all in, it's going to look like the first or second installment of the World Baseball Classic, where nobody could care less. And this time, that's what it feels like. When I look at the Four Nations face-off that are going to start, first of all, tickets are not being sold. In Boston, it's even worse than Montreal, by the way, the ticket sales, which means nothing. And I kind of hope, which is probably the worst nightmare of the NHL, that Finland and Sweden meet in the final. That would be the best way to make sure nobody cares about this final. It is, to me, a little bit of a over-push tournament, especially when you go on NHL.com and you have like Patrick Liney saying, oh, we hate them. We hate them for generations in all sports and all. It's like the headlines are made to make sure that we're paying attention. But I'm paying attention on what's going on behind the scenes, and this will not be pretty.
Yeah. Is there any form of excitement for the tournament all across the Canada and your way in Vancouver?
It's funny because like I feel like no one knows it's happening unless they watch.
Oh, wow.
Well, no, because it's like it's so far removed from our area, and yeah, sure, some Canucks are going. Like talk, it's behind the bench for Canada. Miller, Pettersson, like they're going. Quinn Hughes, obviously. How did I forget him? But
Shame on you.
uh, he's just like I'm just so used to seeing him everywhere. So like, I don't know. I think he deserves a breather. Anyway, I agree with Kev's point that like there should be more nations in the face-off. Like I want to see Latvia or something like that. Like bring in other countries. And the best on best thing, I feel like also doesn't apply when you consider some of the players that were left off certain rosters, specifically for Canada. I mean, we just had this conversation with the World Juniors. I think, yeah, you can only hear Sidney Crosby say Four Nations facing off twice so many times. That's his only line in the ad is Four Nations facing off. And I am just like, as much as I appreciate seeing William Nylander speak Swedish, like there's only so much you can take. Yeah, I'm not sure it's gonna pan out fully for the NHL. I think it's also Canada's logo sucks, so like it looks AI generated. Like it's absolutely horrible.
Don't get me started on this. You know, I'm a sports fashion enthusiastic. Zach, do we have a believer in you?
Nope.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
But you know what? It's crazy because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but you know, obviously working in the biz, I have a lot of friends who, you know, we share a passion and all that. And I have one friend who's excited. That's it. But why is it not resonating with you, Zach?
So to piggyback off of what Kaya said about Quinn Hughes needing a breather, I do not want an injury-riddled Austin Matthews getting injured at this tournament when his wrists are made of nothing at this point because he's been injured so much in his career, and that obviously is a major factor with his shot and being such an elite player. But my bigger concern is the NHL has already done a made-up tournament right. And that was back hockey when Team North America and Team Europe were kicking around back in 2016.
That's interesting. That you like that tournament? I didn't even like that tournament either.
Yeah. I'm with Max on that one.
That one was fun. We had all the kids giving to Team Russia a run for their money. They beat Team Sweden. Like all these like 19, 20-year-olds that wouldn't have been on these other rosters aside from like Connor McDavid on Team Canada. And so if you're going to do it before the season. Make that your preseason because no one watches the preseason anyways. And that was at least entertaining and fun. This is just it's four teams. Like really?
It's a glorified all-star game without all the all-stars.
Exactly. And look, I mean, no one watches the All-Star game anyways, so I guess for that it works out, but it isn't what the NHL was going for, and when teams like Russia aren't even allowed to compete, it just makes it all illegitimate. Like, it doesn't matter. You could win this tournament, and is anyone going to actually buy that that's the best team in the world? No, because they didn't play against the best.
I feel like that's a good point. Like they're not playing against the best teams. And I feel like, because it's also not a double IHF thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's completely separate. So like, they're just, I mean, politically, yeah, avoiding Russia for like PR standpoint. But also you could just have a team of like like, are you kidding me? You're not putting David Pastrnak in this tournament?
No Pasta, no Leon.
No, Leon. Oh my gosh.
Like
no.
Czechia would have had an amazing team. Like that's the thing. It's not just about Russia being off. Russia being off is just an example. But I think deep down, the reason why it's 14, it's because they needed to be in a short time period, right? To make sure that it doesn't last too long. And also the format, the round robin, and then the top two teams facing the final. Anyways, just like full disclosure, actually worked for the network who's going to broadcast these games in French, and I'm not excited.
Yeah, be careful, my man.
So that tells you the level that I believe that sometimes we're overhyping this. And by the way, rest in peace to Sweden's goaltenders. We've talked about it earlier on the show, but Gustafsson's going to play a whole lot in that tournament.
I think, guys, we need to address the reason that it's only 4 teams is so that Canada can come in the top 4.
Oh my God!
Actually, I agree with that.
But you know what? And to me, I'm not even going to act and pretend to play devil's advocate because I'm the biggest hater of this tournament. I am by far the biggest hater of this tournament. I feel like in 20 minutes I can come up with a better idea. But anyways, let's not go there. But that is such an interesting thing that you brought in, Zach. And to me, the last nail in the coffin is that we have the Olympics in a year. We do have it. And the only little argument that they have to get us excited is that finally, after almost a decade, we are getting back best on that. No, we're getting it back in a year, guys. Like it's in a year, and it's in a year, and Germany's going to have its best team it ever had. Switzerland always Raksavok. We're going to have fun there. And yeah, Zach, you agree. Maybe Canada will not come out on top in this tournament.
They're not. They're not. Look at their goaltending. Look at like their roster. They're absolutely cooked.
If Canada comes top 3, it'll be a surprise.
Oh, well, I would not go that far.
Kinda.
If Canada wins a game, it'll be a surprise. If Canada doesn't allow 11 per game,
full Michael Scott here. Too far.
Hockey Canada is the worst organization in all of professional sports. Well, so anything that encourages them folding.
By the way, I want to introduce you to Soccer Canada. So those are very similar organizations.
At least they didn't. Yes. As far as we know, they didn't cover up what Hockey Canada covered up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. You're right. At least
Soccer Canada. I also, I'm on that board, Kev. But I would say. Oh, I was gonna make a point. The Olympics are in a year, and you said we're finally getting best on best hockey, Max.
Yeah.
Whose fault was it that we didn't have best on best?
Well, the NHL.
The NHL's fault.
Yeah.
So you're trying to cover up what you caused. Like 2018 Olympics, no, we're just not going to send them. We're just not going to, no, we're not going to do that. And then 2022, I understand that point because,
COVID.
Pandemic. At the same time, they were having teams play. They had to still have empty arenas in some capacities in certain provinces. They had half full arenas. I know in BC that happened. Or they have to postpone a week of games because the entire team gets COVID. I know that happened for the Islanders early on in the season. You're still putting these teams at risk, so you can't even say you pretend to care about these players. It's the NHL's fault.
The amount of money I would pay to see Gary Bettman stand up in front of the media and say, I was wrong.
Oh my God. Don't give me hope, Zach. Oh, wow.
He'll never say. He's a lawyer. He'll never say it.
No, it's. I think there's more chance that we're going to see. Here's the French expression of the week. We're going to see a week with 4 Thursdays in it before we're actually going to see Gary Bettman apologize publicly for it.
We'll see the Leafs in the Cup final before we see Gary Bettman.
Well, maybe not.
And that's the Leafs fan who said it.
I was just gonna say he's a man. He's never gonna apologize. But y'all did that better.
Oh, wow, beautiful. This is going to be the closing statement. Kaya and Teach, we can catch you on Game Over Vancouver. Zach Payne, we can catch you on Game Over Toronto. Thank you so much for joining in today. We apologize. This segment is not even. We're not even sorry. We're not even sorry if we totally ruined the Four Nation face-off for you. This will be it for today's episode, folks. Thank you so much again for joining in. Make sure to follow Game Over Network on YouTube and catch your favorite team on Game Over Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Give us a like on YouTube. Give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And we will talk to you on next episode of Hyperdrive Hockey. Thank you so much, everyone. And have a safe weekend. Bless you all.